Chapter 1. Finding It. "The best kind of book," said Barnaby, "is a magic book." "Naturally," said John. There was a silence as they all thought about this and how true it was. "The best kind of magic book," said Barnaby, leaning back against the edge of the long, low library table and surveying the crowded bookshelves, only seeming somehow to look beyond them and beyond everything else, the way he so often did, "is when it's about ordinary people like us, and then something happens, and it's magic. Like when you find a nickel, except it isn't a nickel, it's a half-magic talisman," said Susan. "Or you're playing in the front yard, and somebody asks is this the road to Butterfield?" said Abby. "Only it isn't at all. It's the road to Oz," shrilled Frederica, jiggling up and down excitedly, for she had read the book in which this happens. The lady sitting at the far end of the table sighed and looked up, putting her hand to her head as if it ached. "Please," she said, "can't we have quiet?" Now, Miss DeWitcher, the librarian, wagged a finger in merry reproof as she skimmed past. Now, this is a children's room, you know. It's for the children to enjoy." The lady sighed again, closed the book she was reading, and opened another. Abby tried to catch her eye and look sympathetic, but the lady would not meet her gaze. Abby knew the lady well by sight. She was called Miss Prang, Miss Eulalie Smith Prang, and she spent most of her days in the children's room at the library, looking in the different books and taking things out. When she had taken enough out, she put it together in a new book. There were a lot of her books on the library shelves already, but they were not the kind of magic books Barnaby and John and Susan and Abby and Frederica had in mind. Mostly they were about dear little fairies who lived in buttercups. Abby sometimes thought that if Miss Prang would listen when she heard the children talking, instead of sighing and put her hand to her head, it might do her books a lot of good. For instance, she ought to be listening to Barnaby right now. "The best kind of magic book," Barnaby was saying, "is the kind where the magic has rules, and you have to deal with it and thwart it before it thwarts you. Only sometimes you forget and get thwarted." Everybody began talking at the same time, and the name of E. Nesbit was heard in more than one voice, for she was the 5 children's favorite author, and no wonder, though Frederica liked the Oz books nearly as well. "Why couldn't she have lived forever?" said Abby, taking that best of all Nesbit books, The Enchanted Castle, down from the shelf and looking at it with loving eyes. "We've read all of hers, and nobody seems to do books like that any more." "If you could have a brand new magic book specially made for you," said John, "what would you choose?" "One about a lot of children," said Abby. "One about 5 children just like us," said Frederica. "And they're walking home from somewhere, and the magic starts suddenly before they know it," said Susan. "And they have to learn its rules and tame it and make the most of it," said Barnaby. At the far end of the table, Miss Prang muttered to herself, pushed the books about in front of her, and at last half rose to her feet, gazing imploringly in the direction of the librarian's desk. Miss DeWitcher came skimming across the room again. "I think then, children, if you're ready to go," she murmured apologetically, "perhaps it would be best? Have you found enough books to take?" Of course they had not, for who has ever found enough books? But they scrabbled together the ones they had chosen, and lined up at the desk to have the date stamped in them. It was then that Susan looked back and saw the book sitting all by itself at one end of the bottom shelf. It was a red book, smallish but plump, comfortable and shabby. There had once been gilt letters on the back, but these had rubbed away, and Susan couldn't read the name of what it was. Still, it looked odd enough to be interesting, and worn enough to have been enjoyed by countless generations. On a sudden impulse, she added it to the pile in her arms, and took her place at the end of the line. She thought Miss DeWitcher looked at her a bit strangely when she saw the red book, but "That's a 7-day book," was all she said. Susan was surprised. Usually the books that had to be returned in 7 days were the newest ones, and new was the last thing she would have thought this book to be. "Oh, well, we'll be through with it before then," she said. "I wouldn't be too sure," remarked Miss DeWitcher, in rather a peculiar voice, Susan thought. But she stamped the book with a will, and a minute later Susan and the others emerged from the library into the bright, new-washed June morning. If you had seen the 5 children coming down the library steps that day, you would have thought they belonged to 2 families, and this was true. John and Susan were tall and light-haired and calm. Barnaby and Abby and Frederica were little and quick and dark. "You two look just the way you are," Barnaby had said one day, back when the two families had first met. "You look worthy and dependable. You look like people who would be president and vice president of the class." "Well," admitted Susan apologetically, "we usually are." She and John were president and vice president of the 5th grade that year. They were in the same class, not because they were twins, which they weren't, but because John had been very sick once and missed a whole year of school. But that was long ago. Now John was big and strong and played quarterback on the school football team. Susan was captain of girls' soccer, and they were both rather good at chess. In schoolwork, their marks generally averaged B, or at least B-. Almost everybody liked them, even teachers, and their days were pleasant if uneventful. Or at least, that was the way things had been up till last summer. But then last summer Barnaby moved into the house across the road and turned out to be in their room in school, and after that things were changed. Barnaby was a person with ideas. "I don't know what you see in that little runt," Big Pete Schroeder said to John at football practice one day back in the fall, when Barnaby was still the new boy in Miss Dugdale's room. "I don't see what you want to go around with him all the time for." "It's like this," John told him. "He has ideas, and he's my best friend, so lay off." Big Pete Schroeder laid off, because John's word was law in 5-1A. The only one who could tell John what to do was Barnaby. Barnaby had ideas. The ideas Barnaby had weren't always good ones, but he had them one after another all day long, and some of them were exciting. He believed in magic, for one thing, or said he did. He believed that anything could happen, any minute, and that sometimes you could make things happen if you tried hard enough. And he could think up wonderful games and ways to make the most boring things seem like fun. Nobody would ever have taken Barnaby for the president of anything. He was not dignified enough. And everybody did not like him as much as John and Susan did. He was stubborn and hot-tempered and impatient, and when he disagreed with people, he started arguments. Miss Dugdale said the trouble with Barnaby was he was opinionated. Susan sometimes tried to reason with Barnaby for his own good, and other times John had to step in and defend him when he got into fights with boys who were bigger than he was. That was one thing about Barnaby. Even his enemies agreed. He had spunk. He wasn't afraid of anybody. But he wasn't really at his best with his fists. He was more of a brain. It was typical of him, Susan and John felt, to have an interesting and unusual name, and to have sisters with interesting names too, Abigail and Frederica. "Our names sound just like us," Susan complained one day, after Barnaby had come into their lives. "Good old Susan and John," agreed John. Barnaby liked his own name. He was proud of its differentness, and never would answer to Barney or any other nickname. And Frederica was just the same. People took their lives in their hands who dared to call her Freddie. Frederica was the baby of the family, and even fiercer-tempered than Barnaby. But everybody called Abigail Abby. Abby was that kind of person, just jolly and friendly with no temper at all. Barnaby always said Abby must be a throwback, only he couldn't decide what she was the throwback to. She wasn't a bit like the rest of the family. "That's 'cause she's the middle one," said Barnaby's father, overhearing this one afternoon. "Middle ones are mild. Only don't count on it. She may surprise you some day." He ruffled Abby's hair, and Abby gave him a loving look. Barnaby and Abby and Frederica's father was a nice man. He was a singer on television, but not a famous one yet. Mostly you saw him as one of the quartet, singing that his beer was Feingold, the dry beer, or wanting someone to be sociable and have a poopsie. He was little and quick and dark like Barnaby, and when he was at home playing croquet or badminton with the kids, he looked more like their brother than their father. But he wasn't home so very often, because with 3 children to support, he had to go into New York at all kinds of hours on all kinds of different singing jobs. Barnaby's mother used to be a dancer, but now she went whizzing around all day in her old car, trying to sell other people's houses, to help make ends meet and keep up their payments on their own house. Their house was new and little, just large enough to hold a family of 5. Susan and John's house across the road was big and old. Sometimes Susan thought it was too big for just her and John and Granny. Susan and John's parents had died a long time ago, the same year John was so sick. After that, Granny came to stay with them, but whether she was taking care of them, or they were taking care of her was never quite clear. Susan and John often felt as if Granny were the child and they were the grown-ups. Granny was like that. She was little and frail and older than most grandmothers, and yet almost too energetic. And she was so unexpected in what she might do, and often did, such as climbing cherry trees or shoveling snow off the walk, that Susan and John hated to leave her alone in the house any more than they had to. Sometimes one of them would miss a party sooner than have both of them go out for a whole evening at the same time. Not that Granny would have climbed trees or shoveled snow in the dark of night, but she would probably think of something just as dangerous and unsuitable. So altogether it was wonderful for Susan and John when Barnaby moved into the little new house, and they had a friend right at home, almost in the front yard. And then to have the friend turn out to be a person with ideas was almost too good to be true. One of the ideas Barnaby had was that Susan and John should get acquainted with the public library. Up till then, John hardly read anything at all outside of school, and Susan mostly read about Sue Barton, student nurse. But books were Barnaby's lifeblood, maybe because he was an author himself. He had a book of his own in his mind, and some of it down on paper, but he would never talk about it or tell the others what it was. Except that he had told a little of it to Abby, for she was a poet, or hoped to be, and would understand. Most of the time, when Barnaby wasn't having ideas, or thinking about his own book, he was reading other people's. He read one a day at least, and was anxious that his friends should do the same. It was Barnaby who had decided that Saturday was library day. Each Saturday, as soon as breakfast was over, the 5 children would ride along with Barnaby's mother on her way to the office, and with Barnaby's father too, if he were catching the train for an early rehearsal, and got off at the library corner. Later, after an hour or two of rummaging and browsing, and a lot of advice from Barnaby, they would come down the library steps and walk along the village street that turned into the curving country road home, reading as they went. And Barnaby had made a game of that too. Each one got to read part of his most interesting-looking book out loud, and then the others were free to criticize. This particular June morning started out no differently from the others. As the 5 children wandered along Cherry Street, Barnaby opened his top book hopefully and began chapter 1. But after only a paragraph or two, he leafed over to the back, glanced at the last pages, and shut the cover with a disgusted bang. "I thought so," he said, "of all the gyps. It calls itself the Magic Door, but there's not a speck of real magic in it anywhere. It's just about this boy that learns to get along with these other people by being friendly and stuff, and the Magic Door is just the door of good fellowship or something. Man, do I despise a book like that." And the others could not have agreed with him more. Usually the 5 children could spot a book like that a mile off, though. It wasn't very often they got fooled. So then, of course, Frederica had to read about Ozma's birthday party from the end of the road to Oz, the way she almost always did. The others never minded listening to this once again. It took them back to their own happy, carefree, innocent childhood. When she had finished, Barnaby looked around at the others. Anybody else? Ordinarily, Susan would have been the last to answer. She wasn't a quick reader out loud, and was afraid of disgracing herself in Barnaby's hearing by stumbling over long words. But today she looked at the little old shabby-looking book on the top of her pile, and something made her change her mind. "I've got this book here," she said. "What is it?" said Barnaby. "Who's it by?" "I don't know," said Susan. "It doesn't seem to say. I just kind of think it might be interesting." And she opened the worn red cover and began to read. These are the words that Susan read. "The best kind of book," said Barnaby, "is a magic book." "Naturally," said John. "The best kind of magic book," said Barnaby, leaning back against the edge of the long, low library table, and surveying the crowded bookshelves, only seeming somehow to look beyond them, and beyond everything else too, the way he so often did, "is when it's about ordinary people like us, and then something happens and it's magic. Like when you find a nickel, except it isn't a nickel, it's a half-magic talisman," said Susan. "Or you're playing in the front yard and somebody asks, 'Is this the road to Butterfield?'" said Abby. "Only it isn't at all. It's the road to Oz," shrilled Frederica, jigging up and down excitedly. Susan's voice trailed off. She looked at the others. "It can't be," said Barnaby. "It is," said Susan. "It's about us. All of us, and every single thing we said." "Let's see."